Nice to meet you too.
What's the title of your book?
It's called Out of the Cocoon, A Young Woman's Courageous Flight from the Grip of a Religious Cult.
But isn't one person's cult another person's religion?
Well, that's true. A lot of people would say that. My answer to that is what you call something isn't nearly as important as recognizing the contents. You can take a label off a can of beans and slap on a peach label and you still have beans inside. If you asked any cult member today if they're in a cult, you can bet they'd give you a dirty look. And that's because people don't knowingly join a cult. They join a religious movement, a political cause, or some other idealistic group. But one thing to keep in mind is that people don't seek out cults. Cults actively recruit people. Cults are masters of persuasion and manipulation. Cults are intriguing and mesmerizing, like a beautiful jellyfish floating gently through the water. But ask any survivor, and they'd tell you that cults produce a powerful sting.
Now, could you give us a brief background?
Sure. When I was a child, just about 9 years old, the organization, the Watchtower, refers to itself as the truth. And keep in mind, however, that the biggest barrier to uncovering truth is believing you already have it. Basically, our human experiences prior to that time, or our truth, was thrown out the window. Because if we didn't understand the logic for certain rules, we were told to just wait on Jehovah. My mother told me that if I didn't get baptized that year with the family, that I'd have to do it all alone later. And at the same time, while this was going on, the Watchtower was kind of like a persistent salesperson with me. Their only goal was to close the deal, so to speak, regardless of my interest in the product. And in a cult, persuasion is very often synonymous with coercion.
Now, did you ever start to believe what they were feeding you in this cult?
I never bought into the Watchtower's belief system. I consider myself an unwilling hostage from the beginning. For nearly a decade, my truth, my experiences with this organization nearly suffocated me. It felt like the Watchtower leaders were holding a pillow over my face, letting in just enough air so that I wouldn't die. To me, the oppression felt crippling and extremely torturous. And my rage and my frustration escalated with every passing day. We were told to avoid association with non-believers, even relatives, and forbidden to read anything critical of the organization. Groupthink was rapidly employed, and groupthink is when members of a group basically impose peer pressure on those that have questions or concerns in order to please those who are in charge.
No, I'm not quite sure I understand how they controlled you. They didn't put a gun to your head, right?
Well, here's another way to think about it. That's true, they didn't put a gun to my head. Imagine that my family was a child and the Watchtower was the parent. Now imagine that the Watchtower, the parent, says to the child, "Don't you eat that cookie or I'll never talk to you again. And if you eat that cookie, you'll never get another one for the rest of your life." And on top of all that, you know, if you eat that cookie, your siblings and your friends and your family will never speak to you again. If experience has taught you that this could indeed happen to you, then this belief that you have as a child becomes not just belief, but truth in your mind. Your parents don't have to hold a gun to your head to get you to do what they want. Persuasion in a toxic group occurs when when two things happen. Number one is you want to please and be loved and accepted by those in your group, especially the leader or leaders. And two, you're coerced through fear. All cults operate this way. And when you try to point out to the cult that they're being abusive to you, ironically, they put the blame on you. You're told that you're spiritually weak, you're causing the upset in your family and hurting those you love, and you should feel ashamed of your independent thoughts.
Now, how did you respond to this situation in your life?
Well, for almost a decade, I put on a mask from the age of 9 until I was 18, and I played the role I was expected to play. I was a good actress. My insides, though, felt twisted, and my heart really ached for a healthier existence. I felt torn and very powerless as a child to change my situation. my truth, my experience told me that a healthier life truly did exist, because up until then, up until the age of 9, I had a healthy life. And for the next decade, though, I basically held on to my past and the memories that I had that were good, and I held on to hopes and dreams for the future. In my mind, the present did not exist. And I guess many people disassociate to survive trauma, and this is one of the things that helped me cope. I longed, desperately longed for a normal life where I could be free to think and express myself, make mistakes and grow. And there was no way I was going to ever keep my hand out of that cookie jar. Right?
Were there some things you did to survive this, essentially?
Well, even though the cult cocoon constricted me greatly, I used many coping strategies, and one of these was journaling. That was as with all cults, independent thought is forbidden. So I wrapped my diary in plastic and I hid it in a log in the forest, and did that for almost 4 years. And this is it. It has my baby teeth still taped inside of it, and I guess it kind of represents the childhood that I was forced to abandon.
You sounded pretty emotionally distraught in this point in your life.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Even though I was just a child, I perceived myself as a square peg, being brutally forced into a round hole. And when I turned 18, I was faced with a life-altering choice. I had to decide between family or freedom, and I chose freedom. Now, people sometimes say that I was courageous, but I wasn't being courageous, I was just surviving.
But what's the big deal? I mean, you were able to leave, right?
Yeah, but leaving didn't come easily. My mother told me when I left that I would become a prostitute and thief. And even though those words from her still haunt me today, I guess I was insightful enough at the time to recognize that my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, really didn't know me or herself. Because if she had, she would have given both of us a little bit more credit than that. You know, shortly after I left, I flew to Colorado with a one-way plane ticket and $50 in my pocket. But I was determined to not only survive, but thrive. And the years that followed were kind of a rebirth for me in every sense.
But everyone has family issues at some point in their life. I mean, that's just normal.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody has problems with different people in their family. But the pain of shunning is searing, and for most people who haven't experienced it, it's not something they can easily relate to. But I'll try to put it into perspective for you. Imagine going home tonight and think about 2 or 3 people in your life that you're really close to, and imagining that those 2 or 3 people have just died today. How would that make you feel? Imagine it's a mother, a father, a child, a spouse, a best friend. Now imagine finding a note from these people telling you that you are responsible for this separation and loss that you're experiencing. That's what hundreds of thousands of people have experienced through shunning.
Now, how do these high control groups use persuasion to recruit people?
In a word, deception. Cults limit how much information they'll divulge to you in the beginning. And when someone stifles your questions, you know, indoctrination is a much easier thing to facilitate.
In your book, Out of the Cocoon, you talk about hopes and dreams a lot. What are your hopes and dreams today?
I hope that someday colleges and schools around the world will offer education to people about thought reform and persuasion, so that people are able to make more informed decisions when a cult comes recruiting. You know, red flares ought to go off like fireworks as a warning sign when anyone denies you the right to question anything. And I guess I'd just like to conclude by saying that anybody who wants more information about my story or cults in general, please contact me through my website at www.outofthecocoon.net, .net like butterfly. And I will be happy to write back to you and send you one of my free cult newsletters.